Here's the balance math nobody actually shows you. It takes far fewer bad addresses than people assume to trip an infrastructure provider's tolerance for your whole account, not just the 1 cent that cost it. We ran the actual numbers against the thresholds sending platforms publish in their own documentation, and the margin for a dirty list is thinner than most senders think, thin enough that mostly clean isn't the same as clean. Start with a hard ceiling. Per Amazon's own simple email service documentation, an account gets placed under review once its bounce rate reaches 5% and sending can be paused entirely at 10%. On a 5000 contact send, 5% is 250 bad addresses. That's not a huge, obviously scraped list. That's the kind of decay rate a perfectly normal database picks up in under a year of sitting unverified. The same dashboard tracks a second number that draws an even tighter line, complaint rate, which triggers review at 0.1% and can pause sending at 0.5%, 1/10 the room bounce rate gets, on a metric that's driven entirely by what recipients do, not by data quality alone. Run that same 5000 contact batch 2 ways and the gap is the whole video. An unclean export, verified once at some point in the past and never rechecked, commonly bounces in the high single digits once the underlying data has moved on, comfortably over that 5% line on its own, before anything else about the campaign, the copy, or the send time is even a factor. A list verified immediately before delivery lands bounces in the low single digits, which is where sending platforms actually want to see you, with headroom left before the reputation math turns against you. Same volume, same format, same spreadsheet columns. The only difference between the two lists is when the verification actually happened relative to the send. And bounces aren't even the number that ends a domain, spam complaints are, and the ceiling there is stricter. Per Google's own sender guidelines, keep spam rates reported in Postmaster tools below 0.30%. Below 0.3%, not below 3%, that's roughly 1 complaint per 330 recipients before Google starts routing your mail to spam wholesale. A bounce-heavy list doesn't directly generate spam complaints, but the two failure modes share a root cause. Contacts nobody actually asked to hear from, sourced from data that was never checked close to send time. 4 things about the math that don't show up until you run it yourself. First, the percentage, not the raw count, is what triggers the platform's response, which means small early sends amplify the damage of a handful of bad addresses far more than the same handful would inside a huge established list. A brand new domain sending its first 300 emails has almost no room for error at all. Second, bounce rate is measured per account, so one dirty batch inside an otherwise clean campaign still drags the whole number down, and the platform doesn't separate out which segment caused it. Third, recovering a damaged sender reputation takes weeks of clean sending, not a single good day, so the cost of a bad batch compounds well past the campaign that caused it. You're paying it back on every send after, not just the one that tripped the threshold. Fourth, verification only works as a lever if it happens right before the send. Cleaning a list once, months before you use it, is functionally the same as not cleaning it at all, because the data has moved on since the check was run. To be fair, none of this means a single bounce sinks an account. One hard bounce inside a 5000 send batch is 0.01%, nowhere near the ceiling. The math only turns dangerous at scale once dozens of bad addresses accumulate inside the same account tally. That's the case for verifying close to send time instead of once, early, and never again. Contact data decays as fast as 70.3% a year per Gartner's research, so a list that passed a bounce check in January can already be sitting well past that 5% AWS ceiling by the time a busy team actually gets around to sending in the second half of the year. The fix isn't a bigger verification budget, it's verifying at the moment the list is actually used, not at the moment it was first assembled. Our verdict: bounce math is unforgiving in a way most senders never see until an account gets flagged. In the stack we run, Quarvio verifies contacts before they ever ship, which is the only point in this math that actually matters, not a one-time check months earlier. Instantly handles the send-in and warm-up once the list clears that bar. Informail keeps the inboxes and authentication clean underneath, so the platform side of the reputation math holds up its end too. AimFox runs LinkedIn outreach in parallel off the email domain entirely. Do the bounce math on your own list before an infrastructure provider does it for you.